Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight to the PlymouthFirst third annual Candidates Night. I'd like to thank the candidates this evening from the Planning Board. We're going to initially start with the Planning Board, and we'll go on from there to the Select Board. But at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our moderator this evening, Julie Thompson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And welcome to what I believe is the last forum that all these candidates will have to be involved with. This is sponsored by PlymouthFirst, and they wish to thank the town of Plymouth for allowing us to use the Great Hall, and to the local scene, PAC TV, who's covering this live on their YouTube streaming service and on Comcast 47, Comcast 9 and Verizon 47. You will be able to watch this on replays if you need to afterwards. I'm Julie Thompson, and I will be your moderator. As the prior executive director of PAC TV, which is now the local scene, and a former member of the Plymouth Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, I've had multiple opportunities to interview and moderate candidates over the past decade. I'm not a member of PlymouthFirst, and I do not live in Plymouth. Our forum tonight will begin, of course, with the two candidates for the contested race of 1 year on the Planning Board, and will conclude with the 5 candidates in the contested race for 2 3-year seats on the Select Board. Thank you to all the candidates who are running campaigns that cost money and time and a huge amount of energy, all to hopefully be elected to unpaid volunteer seats on important town boards. Thank you very much. You're passionate about your positions and your desire to serve, and we do thank you for that. The candidates have been given an overall timeline for this forum, but have not been given the actual questions. There will be no opening statements, and responses to questions will be timed. There will be a 2-minute closing opportunity for all the candidates. And time permitting, I may direct debates between the candidates on subjects that they have absolute disagreements on, or if they just have 2 totally different perspectives. Also, if there's any audience members who want questions, who have questions, if I have time, I will absolutely ask them. Ask you to go over there and fill them out legibly so I can read them. And if we do have time, I will read them. And make sure that the questions you ask are for all the candidates and not just one. There's a timer on the back wall that the candidates and myself can see. Steve Bulletin from Plymouth is going to run that for us. Thank you very much at my direction. The candidates are seated left to right from the audience point of view in alphabetical order. Please silence your cell phones and hold any applause till the end. And we will begin with the 2 candidates running for the Planning Board, Frank Mand and Thomas Jacintho. Tom, I'm going to ask you the first question, and then we're going to alternate back and forth throughout the rest of the forum.
Great.
Are we ready?
All set.
All righty. So question number 1, you'll have 2 minutes to answer this. Housing, of course. Housing has become increasingly expensive in Plymouth. The cost of buying a home in Plymouth has increased some 50% just in the past few years. What specific plan, proposal, or initiative can the Planning Board offer or support to make housing more affordable in Plymouth? And please provide specifics.
Certainly. I believe with the master plan forums that we've seen that 71% of Plymouth is zoned to 3-acre residential. With the cost of land and materials going up over time, it's impossible to make those kind of numbers work for our developers without making the houses unaffordable for people to purchase. As I had said in the forum last week, I think a zoning change that could encourage developers to move away from building larger homes to maybe smaller lots with smaller homes in areas that we think are appropriate, areas that have services. That way we can create affordable homes that just not only starter homes, but even homes that we can use for downsizing seniors. We need to think about our housing regulations. Every regulation restriction that we're putting on housing is just making it more expensive for it to be built. We need to make sure that we have a balance between what we require of our developers and what it's going to cost them. Every time we put a restriction on a developer and it's going to cost them too much, they're going to go back to finding another way around it. So that's when we start getting into our hostile 40Bs. And that's not the way that we should be doing things. We need to be proactive and work with them.
Okay, thank you. Frank?
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. Housing has become increasingly expensive in Plymouth. The cost of buying a home in Plymouth has increased some 50% in the past few years. What specific plan, proposal or initiative can the planning board offer or support to make housing more affordable in Plymouth? And please provide specifics.
Well, I've lost count about how many affordable housing groups we really have working in the town trying to develop affordable housing. I think perhaps there needs to be an affordable housing supergroup that works together, unified, bring all their talents and specific needs together. I'm not sure that's in place. It's something I think should happen. I also believe that we need to develop a strategy for reaching that elusive 10% housing number, affordable housing number, so that we're exempt from 40Bs, because then we can plan for where we want housing and what kind of housing. Oftentimes we get so-called affordable housing, 40Bs, bring them in, and others, but they're really not affordable, as we all understand. They're 80% of the AMI, and that might be $2,500 or more for these small units. We need to be able to control that so we can have additional housing that we specify is truly affordable, or workforce housing. Another thing that is part of other plans is the notion that if we develop specific types of light commercial, if we have, let's say, a medical zone or something like that, and we are attracting specific types of commercial development, that we include, and we maybe not require, but ask that also has workforce housing directly associated, perhaps even built into those kinds of structures. Thank you.
Okay. Do either of you know of any specific plans that are on the table for affordable or workforce housing? Smaller units, smaller lots?
I think I've heard Mr. Sheridan is one of the developer in town. He has a few developments, smaller scale, but he, being an independent operator, I believe, and maybe through his ability to find the right price on a piece of property, is in some instances offering below 80%, 60% or so. But we really need 60% to be almost the high water mark, maybe 40% if we can. And the best way probably to do that, I would think, would be on town-owned land, where that's our cost. And so that's something a lot of people are working on.
Okay, Tom, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm going to agree that finding housing that is actually affordable for residents of Plymouth is one of the more important parts. Like you said, the 60% high water mark is a goal that we should be striving to reach.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so for question number 2, Plymouth is losing Chapter 1 land to development. Now, Chapter 1 land, as I understand it, is for agricultural, forest, or recreational use. So anyone who did not know that, that's what Chapter 61 land is. And please keep in mind that a lot of people that watch these forums don't know what little things mean, like what does Chapter 61 mean. So if when you're answering questions, if you can be super specific, and if I haven't clarified what it is, that would be appreciated. So how can the town control Chapter 61 land without increasing the residential tax burden? And we'll start this one with Frank.
Well, truly, open space, which is often 61 land, Holtech's property is in 61, the majority of it. Even, I believe, in some form, the Atlantic Country Club is 61 or some variation thereof. I think Wildlands Trust holds that conservation restriction. So if we secure those properties, I'm sorry, the question again was the specific.
How can the town control 61 land without increasing residential taxes?
If we control those properties, if we acquire those properties, then I think that's a great alternative to the infrastructure that would go in otherwise, and I think it's cost effective. I think there's many ways of looking at it, but there's plenty of accounting models that show that open space is more affordable for the community. Open space is less of a cost, has less of a tax burden associated with it, less services, less police, less schools if there's housing there. So I think it's something we need to do. It's not a novel idea. We need to acquire more of this land as best we can, and then it's not developed, and then it's not infrastructure. 49 seconds.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think that we need to focus more on that, on the acquisition of these properties. I mean, a lot of people put them in 61 because it's a tax benefit to them, and then, like Holtech, if they sell it, they have to pay that, but it's really not so onerous that they're not going to still try to develop it, sell it to a developer rather than give it back to the town. But we have to get in there. One of the things we need to do as well is prioritize those, know what those properties are, prioritize their acquisition, and have a plan to do so. I hope that's part of the master plan.
Okay. Tom, you're going to have 2 minutes to answer the same question?
Great. Chapter 61 land or our open spaces. Open space is important for our environment. It's important for our aquifer and really the character of our town. I think in the past, we've always relied on community preservation funds and able to buy this open space, even state matches, federal matches, and stuff like that. But the CPC is a tax every year on our residents. And the state's not matching it like they used to. It used to be 100% match. It's down to 14% now. And a lot of the federal grants have just gone right out the window, I think, with the current climate. We need to look at other ways to be able to acquire the land for preservation. I don't see developers giving away land on the regular without asking for something in return. Maybe strengthening transfer of development bylaws to allow developers to build more concentrated areas where there's services, where it's deemed appropriate in exchange for preservation of our open spaces. And anywhere that the town feels that there's open space that they would like to get, I support the land bank. It was passed by town meeting members. It's working its way through the state now. It's a tax on people who want to move into town. It doesn't tax existing residents. It wouldn't tax someone who already lives in Plymouth who wants to stay in Plymouth. First-time home buyers aren't taxed, and it doesn't increase taxes on people who are already here, who want to stay here and can't afford to have their taxes keep going up and up and up.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of 40B, our next question is about that. So 40B housing, for those who are unsure of the mandate, is a state program which allows developers to circumvent town zoning by promising to make 25% of their units affordable, meaning they can be purchased or rented by someone making 80% of the average income based on incomes in Boston. That's for another day. To avoid the 40B developments, Plymouth's affordable housing, by that definition, needs to be at 10%. Do you think we can get to 10%? And if so, how? We're going to start this question with Tom.
I saw that one coming. There's only two of us. So 40B housing, this has been a real challenge and obviously a hot button topic for a lot of people. The number resets every 10 years. So every time there's a census, the number resets and we have to get to this elusive 10% every time. So the next one would be 2030 would be the next census. So if we today could hit the 10% mark, that still only gives us 5 years of kind of a break on being assaulted with 40B developments. The short answer is that without more 40B or 40R units in Plymouth, we're not going to actually hit the 10%. But if we can work to find places where it is appropriate and to have 40B projects, because they're not all bad. The ones that people complain about are the ones that are the hostile ones, where a developer comes in. For example, a developer proposed 198 unit senior living, which we need in Plymouth. A small group pushed back against it. That developer was actually going to give us money for infrastructure. And the developer, after the pushback and not being able to do what he had originally planned, or she had originally planned, came back with just a 40B project. So basically we get 300 units, more traffic, more children in the schools, and more strain on our services. We need to work together to put these units where they're appropriate and where we need them.
Okay. Frank, same question?
So I recently referred to 40Bs as the town's white whale. We've been chasing that elusive 10% affordable number for the last 56 years with hardly a glimpse of it in all that time. If we were to get there, as many of you know, we'd no longer be susceptible to 40B regulations, which allow developers to ignore our zoning and build what they want, where they want. But recently, as I think I mentioned, a town employee discovered we were closer than we had imagined. She confirmed we had, I believe, 588 more affordable units than the town realized, which added to proposed units already in the works brings us theoretically close to 9%. So why, continuing with the Moby Dick metaphor, are we allowing others to row in the wrong direction? Why are we permitting developments that designate 10% or fewer of their units as affordable? Each of those developments maintains our distance from the whale and keeps us from reaching that 10% affordable town-wide. So simply put, we should ask developers and others to do more than 10%. If we maintain 10%, we're always that distance away. It's extremely important that we are exempt from 40B housing and from the impacts that come with such development, which are water, sewer, roads, schools, far more expensive. If a 400-unit 40B development replaces the Atlantic Golf Course, there will be an estimated $4.5 million annual cost to the town. I think we need to all start rowing in the same direction. I'm optimistic we could reach that goal. One way or another, we need to do that. And there's many other aspects to the 40B regulations that allow you to delay, get safe harbor, and a few other things like that. But we need to keep pushing in that direction. It's that important.
So to both of you, as a follow-up, if we have to get to 10% affordable housing, and yet the prices of housing go up all the time, and we're not having another census till 2030, how do we get there? Without, even with 40Bs that at 10 or 25% of their housing is affordable, still 75% isn't. So we have more units to count against reaching that 10%. So, Tom?
I'd say that we need to still be proactive, even if we hit the 10%, right? That doesn't mean we just cut off 5 years of no 40B, we did it. That just gives us the opportunity to be able to place it where it's deemed appropriate and really work to make sure these units are truly affordable housing.
Okay.
It's sad to say, but maybe realistic, that getting to that goal and doesn't have a lot to do with the affordability of those homes. But getting to that goal still gives us more leeway to plan and put things where we want. So I would prefer to do that rather than, we want truly affordable housing, but if we can get to that goal, it gives us many more options.
Okay, great. Next question. What type of economic development do you see appropriate for Plymouth? And how do you think the town can encourage that? And this is a huge subject, so try to be specific. Frank, we're going to start with you, and this is economic development.
That is big and broad.
It is.
Obviously, we need all kind of development to bring some revenue to the town to offset the difference between residential and commercial taxes. But I think we need to be specific. One of the things I've been saying for many years is we're essentially a fisherman out on a pond just casting and hoping to get a nibble. We don't really have a very specific plan for what kind of development we want, where we want it to be, and how that would benefit us. So we're always scrambling around and saying, oh, don't reject this particular developer because we need all development. Well, that's, I think, not the right attitude. I think we should have a little more pride and a little more planning that allows us to get the kind of development we want. If you just ask people on the street, do you want to be in Plymouth? They'd say, yes, it's beautiful, it has all these different things. So why aren't we getting the kind of developers or businesses that we want? Some of it's zoning, but a lot of it is not planning for that. And Holtech may be that opportunity down that Powerhouse Road strip. That's one of the things that's in that Holtech plan Sasaki did. But again, we need to specifically plan. The blue economy proposals of the Plymouth Development Foundation, that's thinking along those lines. Let's get a specific type of high-tech development that brings in good jobs and goes in a particular place.
Okay. Tom? Economic development.
Economic development. Well, I believe that we need to encourage businesses to our town that not only help stabilize residential taxes, but create living jobs and provide services for our residents. Plymouth is suitable for any number of different industries that could accomplish these goals. I have a few examples. First of all, medical. As a paramedic, I see the consequences every day of people not having access to affordable health care or access to health care at all. When you don't have a primary care physician in your neighborhood or your community, you end up using your emergency rooms and your urgent cares as a crutch to health care. That shouldn't be your first point of contact. We need to make sure that we have ample facilities for all of these people. 65,000 residents, and a majority of them are going to be over 55, if not now, soon. There's a real need to expand these types of services to give relief to the hospitals. Secondly, trades. I worked in the trades for some time. I realized that these are skills that you learn and you keep with you for your whole life. These are jobs that you can turn into a business by coming to town. You can start your business here, grow your family, grow your business, and stay in town. And thirdly would be energy, as Mr. Mann mentioned, the Holtech property. Obviously, Holtech is going to hold on to that section of land that was originally reserved for the energy. Is it Entergy? Entergy. Oh, my goodness. They bought the switching station. So you can tell that there's going to be some kind of development there for energy in the future.
Okay, so let me follow up on that. If you're a business, what is keeping you from coming to Plymouth? What are the pluses? And if you're a business, what are the minuses when you look at the town of Plymouth? Frank? Can you do your microphone?
In some ways, it's how you characterize yourself as a community. We don't have the reputation to have the kinds of businesses that we'd like. We don't have any specific medical parks or high-tech parks or anything like that. We've not pursued them. I think another thing is, I think we need to end our long love affair with highway commercial zoning, with the big box stores. Those have really ended up being a big negative in our community. They might look nice in these areas in terms of we've turned a lot of sand and gravel pits into malls or strip malls and things like that. But in fact, they don't produce the kind of revenue compared to the cost of the services that we really need. So, you know, I've heard Bill Cohen speaking about this and how we reached a point, let's say 30 years ago, where that was a town meeting issue, and it was really pushed to have highway commercial replace light commercial, I believe. And since then, I think we've had all these big empty spaces. I remember Commerce Way was once just all parking lot. It's done a little better, and some of the other places have done better, but they still are not good uses of that land.
Right. Okay. Tom, same question?
I think businesses coming here, if you're a massive business with lots of money, you're going to just plop down a building where you decide that you want to do it. If you're a small business or you're a family and you want to move to Plymouth or maybe keep your business all under one umbrella, it becomes increasingly difficult to start a business because you look at it, you're like, well, my business is in Plymouth, but I'm going to have to live another half hour away. Maybe I'll just put my business up where I can actually afford to live, where I can find a home and make it worth my while.
Okay. So what is what's the one thing the town needs to do, in your opinion, to attract the types of businesses that you're both talking about that we don't do right now?
Two things. One of them is zoning change to allow for the type of business we want in some areas and the areas we want them. But the other thing is to actually create a goal of a specific type of business and move strongly in that direction. I've heard talk about how we lost Cisco because we weren't business friendly. I don't think that was the case. I think Cisco went to a place that already existed for them. The Plimpton Industrial Park had existed for like 50 years, and nobody really was in it. I think there was a big paint processing place there or something, but they saw it was on the highway, it was ready-built, it had sewer and electricity, and they said, oh, it's ready-made, let's move in there.
Okay.
We need to be ready-made for the kind of businesses we want, and that's an investment, but we need to do it.
Okay. Tom?
I think getting the businesses to come in by enticing them with some kinds of tax credits or, like you said, planning for parks where it would make sense to have a business where you would want to be in a group of other businesses that could further bolster your own type of work and work with other people.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask this one question that came from someone in the audience, and then we'll go to your closing remarks. While it's cheaper to buy open space than allow it to be developed, that reduces the supply of land for development, increasing home prices. How much open space is enough, meaning how much should we or are we going to buy? Frank?
Well, my perspective is that there's almost not too much for open space because I really do think it reduces our overall costs. I understand the argument that when you have open space and you don't have other land, it becomes more expensive and then you have unaffordable housing on it. And we need to work that out. But again, open space is important here not only for the fact that it controls what we can do in what places, and some open space areas could have well-designed commercial space, but we really need to move in that direction. And could you state the question again? I got myself off.
Well, I'm going to let
Okay.
Tom answer it, and then you can go back and forth between the two if you want to. I need my glasses, I'm blind. Well, cheaper to buy open space than allow it to be developed. That reduces the supply of land for development, which increases home prices. How much open space is enough, meaning how much are we actually going to buy? Tom?
I think in purchasing open space, we need to look at it as an investment in the town. So open space doesn't necessarily mean we're going to maintain that as a wooded forest or a park or something along those lines. In obtaining open space at this point, we can plan for our future. For if we pick up land today, then 20 years from now, it makes sense to put a school there. We're not paying a premium later. We don't have to scramble to find land for a firehouse or another service that we need. If we want to put a sewer treatment plant or something somewhere, we already have the land on our grips. So I'm not saying that we should be buying every single property. Obviously, every case is different, but the more land the town is in control of, the more we have control of.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we, at this point, go to your closing remarks? And I'm going to let you have a little more than 2 minutes. We'll do 2.5. Anything that you didn't get to say or talk about, or something that you want to bring up, please use this time. And we're going to go to Tom first and then Frank.
All right, well, thank you very much. I'd like to start by thanking PlymouthFirst for hosting this event. It's great to get out here and meet all of you, and for our viewers at home to get to see us on your TV. I want Plymouth to be a place where families like mine can afford to come, live, raise their families, and for seniors to be able to afford to stay here. I want Plymouth to offer opportunities for everyone who wants to live and work here to come to our community. I want Plymouth to be able to preserve its character and its history. These are things we can do by being creative in how we use the land. As a first responder, a tradesman, and a parent, I have a different perspective. I'm someone who's familiar with state and municipal code. I'm someone who deals with visitors and residents alike. I'm someone who cares deeply about not just the present, but also the future. I do know what we've been doing hasn't been working. We're losing rural land. We have unaffordable housing in places that we do not want it. And we're pushing businesses to other towns. And what we're doing is paying higher taxes because of it. We need to change our approach. I can be part of that change. I don't have an agenda. I'm not part of any groups or special interests. I don't benefit personally from any issues that would come before me on the planning board. I'm not going to make promises I can't keep. Please support me in all of these efforts and vote Tom Jacintho for planning board.
Thank you. And Frank, your closing remarks?
Thank you. And thank you to PlymouthFirst and the town for allowing this here. I have high expectations. When I was on the planning board 4 years ago, my common refrain was, can't we do better? Can't we save more trees? Can't we stop leveling the hills? Can't we do more to protect our aquifer? 4 years later, those questions are still valid. 4 years ago, the board allowed 500,000 cubic yards of sand and gravel to be excavated from a tree-covered lot for the promise that in doing so, an unsightly industrial area would be hidden from view by those passing by. 4 years later, the sand has been taken and a giant pit is visible from the highway. Can't we do better? 4 years ago, I questioned the way the town defined open space and the term incidental and pushed for a requirement that only truly native plants be used in new developments. All of that still needs to happen. 4 years ago, I organized a group whose sole purpose was creating a resiliency matrix to assess new developments. Were they energy efficient? Did they conserve water? Were they carbon neutral? I was not allowed to use that matrix. Today, I want the same and more. I'd like to see the Zoning Board of Appeals elected, not appointed. I think it's wrong that the elected board, the planning board, is too often only advisory to the zoning board. I'd also like to see the board and the town implement a policy whereby larger developments are required to meet informally with both residents and the elected planning board before staff begins negotiations of any kind. I have high expectations. Isn't that what you want from your elected officials? Isn't that what you expect? If you still have high expectations for this community, please honor me with your vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before we close out this section, I want to ask you, you've both been involved in many organizations, you've been on many teams, you've been on many boards or committees or groups that you've worked together with in your life. What are the three personal components of your personality that you think will be most prevalent in helping the planning board be as successful as it can possibly be? Frank, we'll start with you.
The three components of my personality.
Yes, three components of Frank Mann's personality.
Well, I will remark on my distant past to a degree, where I was a reporter for the then vibrant Old Colony Memorial and covered every town board and committee and many other things. And the reporter's zeal, the reporter's interest in finding the facts and having those kinds of discussions and getting beyond the superficial or what's just in front of you, that's very important on the planning board. You have to get out there. You have to view things for yourself. You have to do your own research. A lot of times you're the one that's doing the research if you have a particular interest or concern. So that's one aspect. Also, I would say I have a great love for nature. I think people know that I'm the vice president of the Southeastern Massachusetts Pine Barrens Alliance, and our mission is to educate people to protect and preserve this globally rare ecoregion we're sitting in right now.
Okay.
And that awareness and now kind of a super passion that I have for these particular ecoregions and natural communities and species of birds and animals and plants, that I think also will be well served by my participation on the planning board.
Okay.
That's two.
Okay.
A third
You have one more word, one more adjective?
adjective. I'm passionate about this community.
Okay, passion, yep. Tom, three things about you that you would bring to the planning board?
Three things about me. I guess I would start with the fact that I'm pretty easy to talk to. Very approachable. If I'm at the grocery store, I'm usually the person that I'm asked to get the thing on the top shelf for you because people don't have a problem coming up to me. I'm a great listener. And I think that is really a very important part of being part of the planning process, especially if you're going to meetings for the master planning. You need to hear exactly what your residents are saying to you, and you need to absorb them. Anyone who works in healthcare is going to tell you that sometimes the best medicine is simply listening. I can just be there to hear your concerns and tell you that they're being heard and relay them to other members of the board. And my third would be that I'm hilarious.
You're hilarious.
No,
Oh,
it didn't really
Okay.
work.
okay, thank you. I'd like to thank both of you for participating this evening.
you.
That was great. And we're going to take about a 9-minute break because we're going to set up for the Select Board candidates. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Mahoney. We have 1 minute, and then we're going to start. We can start. Welcome back to the Plymouth First Forum, for the final forum for the Select Board. We hope you don't have to go through this anymore. Please silence your phones. There were a couple that went off last time. For the Select Board candidates, I just wanted to say something to all of you. Your audience tonight should be all potential voters, not just supporters or friends or people that do or do not like your positions, but those who might not know anything about you or the subjects of which you speak. Please don't assume prior knowledge when answering questions. There are an awful lot of people in this town that don't know what a lot of us are talking about. So try to make your answers as specific and targeted as you possibly can. I appreciate that, and I'm sure the voters will also. So for the Select Board candidates, although they're seated alphabetically by last name from left to right, they're also been assigned a number, 1 through 5. So Charlie, you're 1, Deb 2, Bill 3, John 4, and Scott 5. I used a random number generator to set the order of answers for the questions and the closing statements. Okay, so we welcome Charlie Bletzer, Deb Iaquinto, Bill Keohan, John Mahoney, and Scott Vecchi. Welcome, all of you. Okay, we're going to get right into the questions. Now, you're going to have 2 minutes to answer your questions. I'm going to also be really strict about that, but then we might have some debate back and forth between all of you on some of the answers. So the first question is 2 parts. It's about affordability. So part 1, listen carefully to the question. Residents regularly say that rising property taxes is one of the most critical concerns that they have. Controlling that increase requires both revenue growth, obviously, and budgetary savings. So for this part of the question, we're going to talk about budgetary savings. Some municipalities utilize the advances in technology, for example, to create greater efficiencies that don't require current or future payroll dollars. Some combine support services for the town and the school side of the budget. Some are involved in regional or county purchasing or servicing programs. So what steps do you suggest for reining in town expenses? And the order is 52143, so we start with Scott Vecchi. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you, everybody, for being here. And this is a subject that I've been speaking on quite frequently. And one of the things that we need to be concerned about is the affordability of people to be able to live in Plymouth and people on fixed incomes to be able to afford their property taxes and all that other steps and all the other things that they need to live out their golden years in retirement. One of the things that I want to do as your next Select Board member is to participate in the budgeting process as much as I'm allowed to do by law. If we go through our, right now, advisory and finance, the budget, the department heads put their budgets together. They go to meetings with the town manager. They talk through that. Then it goes to advisory and finance. Then the Select Board kind of votes on whatever advisory and finance presents to them. But as someone who was in charge of some of the line items within a departmental budget within the town, I can tell you right now that there is some room to tighten that up. All right, and that's what we really need to do. We need to look at each department's budget. We need to go through it line by line, much like we did with the Charter Commission, went through the town charter line by line, and have these department heads explain their figures based off of what last year's figures were. And too often it comes as things get buried in their budgets, or pet projects get put in their budgets, and they just kind of get glossed over through this whole thing. One of the questions we had at town meeting was, why does the police department have a 37% budget increase? Right? And the answer was cars. So I'm pretty sure we're not buying Lexuses. So that 37% had to have come from somewhere else. So that's an example of a budget that needs to be looked at very carefully, scrutinized, and justified. And I think if we go through all of these budgets a lot tighter than we are right now, that we'll incur savings that'll benefit the taxpayers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Same question for Deb?
So I just want to make sure that I understand the question. So it's about how can the town operate more efficiently?
Right, how do you rein in
How do you rein in
expenses?
expenses? So
Yep.
it's an efficiency question, more or less. Okay.
Or other-
So I'm going to just start by saying that this year I had the opportunity to observe the budgeting process up close and personal. And I saw our FinCom folks, our select board, and other groups and organizations, our town meeting leaders go through the budget with a fine-tooth comb. We have a level service budget here, which means that we provide the same level of services to our residents year after year, and then we fund according to the cost increases in those services. So if we talk about running the town more efficiently or looking for quote-unquote fat in the budget, that means we have to look at what services we want to cut. So that's where we would have to start. And I'm not sure that anyone would have an appetite for cutting the kinds of services that we're providing. You know, we have education is a huge chunk of our budget, so we'd need to think carefully about what services we might want to, we might want to eliminate or reduce or do differently in that budget. And I'm not sure that, I'm not sure that there's any ear in there to do that. But with that said, my background is in consulting. I was a partner in a global consulting firm. And when we were faced with a challenge with one of our organizations that we worked with about finding efficiencies, it was a very structured process where we went through and very carefully prioritized the need. What is the need? What are the critical needs of the organization, and what actually is the money that's available, and how do we prioritize that? But for a municipality like this, I think that we don't want to mess around with anything that has to do with a threat to our public safety, our public health, or our education. So I would be very cautious about looking at the budget as a way to, to improve the property tax situation that we have here in Plymouth.
Okay, thank you. Same question to number one, which is Charlie.
Okay, thank you. I think we need to consider every option when we talk about savings. First of all, we have to make sure our budget is as tight as we can make it. And we do that by relying on our advisory and finance to go through the numbers. But first, we need all our department heads to come in with budgets that they need, okay? Not necessarily want, but that they need. And to tighten up their budgets for that reason. We need our finance director who does a great job to go over everything and see, if there's any excess there. And then advisory and finance will look at those numbers and then bring it before us and cut if we have to. But we're certainly, I don't want to cut jobs to save money, because we need services. We need the residents of Plymouth to have the quality of life they deserve, and that the services are very important. Public safety, DPW, keeping our parks and recs all in great shape. It's very important to us. And then we have to, technology is a big thing. It's something I'm not really great at, but we have an IT director that we need to rely on him to come up with innovative ways to, like for instance, the See-Click Fix program is going very well, and we need to expand that into a true 411 system. That would allow us to be more efficient and provide information for the residents, and more services and information. They'll be able to access. One of our big problems is accessing information. So we need to do that. So that's the future.
Thank you. Okay, number four, which is John Mahoney. Same question.
So rein in expenses and build efficiencies into your fiscal process. That is the direct opposite of Proposition 2.5. Proposition 2.5 basically reset the state finances in 1981. The roads tax, the auto excise tax, is predicated on basically lying to the Massachusetts taxpayer and stealing their money. You can't cut back on zero. DPW director came in front of the Board of Selectmen in 2017 in an act of desperation and begged for $135 million. And I asked two questions. Is there a roads tax? Yes. Does it go to roads? No. That is the height of hypocrisy. Okay? We worked on a process with the finance director to undo that, and you've said you've seen significant investment in our roads in the last 5 to 7 years. Okay? Patricia McCarthy came up to me on town meeting floor back in 2014 and asked me if I supported the meals tax. I'm not a politician. I said if it's going into the general fund, absolutely not. If you want to keep it outside of the general fund and put it into its own interest-bearing account, I'm in. The meals tax is how you should handle money. It's in its own separate interest-bearing account. Last year, that account generated about $2.3 million, including the interest earned. The note on this building is $1.8 million. We invested in this $54 million investment over 30 years without raising 1 penny of property taxes. I amended, Mr. Bletzer supported that. We went to town meeting a couple of years ago and expanded that fund out to proactively investing in public safety, public education, and DPW structures. And by continuing to put a little bit of contributions into that fund every so often, you can prevent property taxes from going up billions.
And last, Bill.
So this is, I got two approaches. One, the first one, having grown up in Plymouth, being here in Plymouth when there were 17,000 people, and 50 years later, there's 70,000 people, nearly 70,000 people. You've seen our tax bill go up, the annual budget increase. It's level funding, and one of the things that we have to be aware of is why we're growing in such an intense manner. And that's why I think that one of the ways of reining things in is to relook at our zoning bylaws that make it more economically feasible for the town to grow in a pace that is manageable. We should be staying away from zoning that brings in commercial enterprise that does not pay its way and that burdens the town with infrastructural improvements and traffic and congestion, such as shopping malls and big box stores. They're difficult. It's not the best form of economic development. We should be focusing on small businesses and light industrial. These are where small businesses locally owned by people pay a livable wage and benefits. This is the type of sustainable local economy that we can build that doesn't burden the taxes. We are going to see increases in our taxes in Plymouth and the budget because we're only at the 50% build out. Plymouth will continue to be built out. And like I said, during that 50-year period of time, my experience has been seeing an ever-increasing budget, and one of the ways is to relook at our zoning and our commercial enterprise and what money is being brought into the town of Plymouth. And the second thing is we have to revise the budget process in terms of the Advisory and Finance Committee and allowing the Advisory and Finance Committee to be involved in the early part of the budget process so that there is a look at each individual budget. I think we need to revisit how our Finance and Advisory Committee analyzes the budget each year before making recommendations to town meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the second part of this question about affordability will concentrate on increasing revenue. What do you think the town's future revenue streams look like, and how can we accomplish that? And please try to be specific. This is going to be 3, 4, 5, 2, 1, so we're going to start with Bill.
So I'll take up where I left off, and that is on zoning. And again, one of the best ways the town of Plymouth can generate a revenue is expanding the zoning opportunities for the town of Plymouth. That if we start to modernize our zoning bylaws for the 21st century when it comes to commercial, we can derive more revenue. Right now, obviously, nearly 80%, 86% of the town is zoned residential. It is residential, excuse me, and about 14% is commercial. So we need to balance that, and we can balance that by revisiting the local zoning bylaws and creating commercial areas that foster light industrial, which is small business. Again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, building small businesses in our community leads to job opportunities and revenue for the town of Plymouth, because in those conditions in light industrial, there's less services the town has to bring to a place like Camelot Park. Camelot Park is a good example of small businesses operating for the tax money that comes out of Camelot Park. The town of Plymouth has to bring far less in services services. So you're winning with light industrial and small businesses. So it's one way of generating a revenue for the town of Plymouth is revisiting how we look at our zoning bylaws and modernizing them again for the 21st century to address the ever-increasing budget. Thank you.
Okay. Next is 4, John Mahoney. Specific increasing revenues.
Increasing revenues, you can't have any more revenue streams than this community has had since January 1st of 1972, okay? So it is very important that government is capable or should learn from the mistakes of the past. You were given roughly $30 million a year over 48 years from a nuclear power plant that was going to close the day you put the shovel in the ground to build it. So if you don't put that money in the general fund, you're living for free. If you don't take the plant, you're sitting here today, lower taxes, smaller government, less debt, more affordability. Again, 1981, we're going to put a roads tax in the general fund. It's going to artificially support the human resources, pay pension, and health care. There's a false narrative that this community lacks revenue. You've never had a 2.5 override. You have $3 to $5, $4 to $6 billion of residential growth coming down the pike, or Route 3, in the next 15 to 20 years, okay? Proposition 2.5 doesn't discriminate against U.S. dollars, whether they come from personal property, industrial, commercial, or residential. They are all a U.S. dollar. They're the same thing. You've never had a 2.5 override, and you're not going to in the short-term future because of these revenue streams coming in. You can't, we finally have a 10-year plan for infrastructure needs. The next 10 years from fiscal 25 to 34 is $600 million. If you multiply that times 4, it's $2.4 billion. If you want to make $2.4 billion of investment in infrastructure, you have to raise property taxes 4.8. Because the rule of thumb is if you're going to bond it over 30 years, you're paying back $2 for every dollar you borrow. So all you have to do is put a little of that money annually into the fund, a different fund.
That's time. Scott, same question?
All right, well, the first thing we need to realize is that taxpayers aren't revenue streams. Revenue streams are things that bring money in, things that the town can do to generate money, not simply additional taxes. One of the things that we're starting to do, and I looked at a video about the solar plan. We're going to start putting some solar panels up down on the DPW down at Camelot. We're going to looking at I don't know what they call it, the raised structures that people park underneath for solar. But there's a lot more of that we can do, including partnering with the schools. And I'm going to say right now, I'm not a big proponent of wind turbines, the big ones that flicker effect and kill birds and all that other stuff. But what I am a fan of is, if everybody's seen the Museum of Science, right? On all the corners of the Museum of Science, they have those stand-up wind turbines that spin around like a corkscrew, right? So why can't we start looking at those? If you go from South High all the way up to the police station, that's a steady 11 to 13 mile an hour wind every day of the year. There was a study done on it. That's why Joe Balboni used that study to build his wind turbine in Camelot Park. So why aren't we looking at things like that, expanding solar? We can put it on some municipal buildings, but how many buildings can we put it on? Hydropower, this city of Seattle is using its own water mains to generate hydropower. But one of the biggest things that we need to look at is the ambulance. All right, right now Brewster provides a zero-cost service. However, the city of Fall River runs its own ambulance as a third service, okay? And what they do are transfers. So they can handle the 911 service, but in addition to that, they do interfacility transports. When I work on the ambulance, we do about 5 a day. They bill Medicare $2,000 each. So my ambulance makes about 10 grand a day for the company. So if we times that by 4 ambulances over Monday through Friday, 5 times, so you got $40,000 a day coming into an enterprise fund.
That's time. Thank you. Number 2, Deb. Okay,
So Plymouth residents bear 86% of the tax burden here for the town. And if you look, the Department of Revenue publishes a list of the categories of tax revenue by each town, so 352 municipalities on this list. Plymouth is at 164. So we're not the highest, we're not the lowest, we're somewhere right in the middle. We're right there with Kingston, Pembroke, Hanover, the Bridgewaters, our neighbors, all around that same 86-14 split. And if you look at the data, the story it tells us is that that's fairly typical for a suburban, semi-rural town like Plymouth. But it's not acceptable. It's still too much of a burden for our folks. And one of the reasons is that our housing values keep increasing. So it's a double-edged sword. Our housing values increase, but so does our property tax. So we have to do something. And what we have to do is really look at developing a comprehensive economic development plan that will allow us to broaden our commercial tax base and at the same time attract businesses that will provide a good livable wage for our people. So look at different towns. Which towns have done that? I always like to look at examples to see what we can learn from that. I look at towns like Randolph, Rockland, Weymouth. They're at 80-20, and they've sustained that for a decade or more. So what are they doing differently? One thing that Weymouth is doing, they identified an economic development site at Union Point, and they said, okay, we are going to develop this out with the kinds of businesses we want, and they built it out. They have the infrastructure there to support it. So it's mixed use with light industry, retail, and some housing in there. And it's really doing a great job at contributing to the commercial tax revenue. I'd love to see Plymouth do something like that.
Okay, that's time. Thank you. And Charlie, you're last on this
Thank
one?
I'd like to see Plymouth achieve a 20 to 25% commercial tax base. People have said it's not possible, but I really think we can do it. And we have to replace all our lower wage service jobs, not all the service jobs, but lower wage jobs, with living wage jobs, good paying jobs, like in the medical field. I'd like to see a medical office park at some point somewhere, construction jobs, and technology where we have an edge here in Plymouth, like our blue economy. Very important. And how we're going to do that is we have to maximize the land that we already have zoned commercial, and we have to utilize that land and fill it. And we have to let businesses know that we're open for business in Plymouth. We have to streamline our process, which we're working on our permanent process, to make it easier for businesses, especially small businesses, to come in and do business in Plymouth. And then we have to look for land, I believe, before we take it, preserve it, and conserve it, and take it off our tax rolls forever. I think we need to look and see if that can be zoned in an area that might entice and encourage the right kind of businesses, the smart businesses, as I said, medical, technology, blue economy, trades, to come to Plymouth. And we have an overstressed BID hospital in Plymouth. And one of my visions is to figure out how we can find land somewhere to put a campus to take the pressure off that hospital by taking departments that don't need to be in the hospital and take them off-site onto a campus similar to what they have in Weymouth on Libby Street, and have a medical office park there. I think that would be very helpful with jobs and bringing revenue into the town, and also help our health care.
Okay, so if I heard all of you correctly, your revenue streams, most of you said, are tied to commercial development. Raise your hand if you agree with that statement. Revenue streams are tied to commercial development. So I heard that wrong. Oh, you said yes? Okay, so none of the other of you think it's commercial development. You do, Deb. Okay, so Charlie and Deb think the revenue streams, the most likely source of revenue would be tied to some form of commercial development. And you do too. Okay, now we have three. John? Yes, I'm asking you, yes. Yes, you can.
Proposition 2.5 does not discriminate. The dollar is the same, no matter where it's coming from. You have billions in the queue. The primary revenue source in the next few decades will be exactly what they have been for the last 50, residential.
Okay.
Okay? Unless, the only significant difference will be the 150 acres currently being decommissioned in Manomet down on the ocean from a former nuclear power plant site.
Okay, so John believes it's residential, not commercial. And Scott?
Like I said before, I don't believe taxes are a true revenue stream. All right, when I talk about revenue streams, I talk about services that can be provided that generate income for the town, that are totally separate and distinct from taxes, right? As I started talking about mirroring the City of Fall River's model, and I sat here and I just did some rough math while I was down here, and if we adopted a similar model where we took over our own 911, but we also did transfers, and we put 4 ambulances out just doing transfers,
Okay.
and they did 5 runs a day each.
Yeah.
It was $10.4 million in a year.
Okay,
All right, so that's what I'm talking about. What can we do that actually brings in money? $10.4 million is conservative math, and that doesn't include any of the 911 billing that would occur. All right,
Okay.
so that's what I'm talking about, services that bring money in.
so we have services, we have commercial land, and we have residential land. We can revisit this a little bit later. Okay, let's go to the third question. No, you know what? I'm going to go to the second question. Hold on one second. I'm out of order here. I'm out of order. Forgive me. Okay, let's do this one, and then we're going to revisit this subject. Communications. Using this very election as an example, you have all been involved in a myriad of Q&As, forums, interviews on many different platforms, including your own individual candidate sites. If a voter wants to spend the time to research, watch, listen to all the information that's out there, watch all the boards and committee meetings, read all the information, it would take a lifetime to do so. One of the challenges in the town the size of Plymouth is providing residents with information that's given in chunks that they can understand and that's not overwhelming. As a member of the Select Board, how can you improve the way communication is brought to all of the people of Plymouth, and maybe even have people that are a little bit more interested in getting involved? And let's do, I'm sorry, I've lost my little space here. Who goes first? On this one is Deb, then Scott, then Bill, then Charlie, then John.
Well, I love this question because I spent most of my career as a communications and change management consultant. So I look at everything through that lens. And my observations about the way the town currently communicates with residents is that we have a lot of room for improvement. And I think one of the first things that we need to do is be more welcoming to our residents. I think what I've seen in the last couple of months since I've been running, and maybe even before then, is that residents want more information. They're becoming much more aware that that things are going on in town, and they do want to be more involved. They just don't know how to they don't know how to engage appropriately with the town, and the town doesn't know how to engage appropriately with them. So one thing that I would love to do when I'm elected to the Select Board is really rethink the way we structure public comments and make a much more proactive attempt to engage the public in those discussions. It shouldn't be the Select Board talking at residents and imposing changes on residents. We need to have a process of engagement, of education, of measurement of what we're doing, and then, just continue that cycle over and over again. I think that's going to be very important to come up with that kind of an engagement strategy. I think that we need to ask for feedback in a more regular way, doing pulse surveys to the public, focus groups with the public, going to where people are and asking them what's important to them, and then using that information and show that we're really listening. So we need to take action based on what we hear, and not just do it because it's a nice thing to do. So it's about educating, informing, engaging, and then taking action.
Thank you. Scott?
One of the things that I look to do is have office hours, right? And we hear that all the selectmen are available, you can get a hold of me anytime, all that other stuff. But if you look at our state representatives, and what Michelle and Kathy have been doing lately is really, really great. They've been paired up, and they've been having, I think it's bi-weekly or something meetings, but they're moving them all around town. So as your next select board member, I want to mirror that and have office hours at very least once a month. I'd like to have them every other week and do them in different parts of the town to be accessible to people. Make sure that they're advertised, whether it's on, Facebook or social media or wherever it is. And that way people are like, hey, Scott's at the meeting room at Cedarville Fire tonight. He's just sitting there with donuts waiting for people to come talk to him. And if the people of Cedarville want to come and talk to me, then they come in and share their ideas. And like I said, whether you're doing it at the Center for Active Living, whether you're doing it, I could sit in my law office, come to town hall, move it all around the town to make it more accessible to the people, but truly be there to talk to them on a set schedule. The other thing is if you've seen any of my political literature or social media or everything, you have to understand what people's attention span is. And when I looked at this stuff, I said, what do people like to see when they look? I like to look at funny pictures on Facebook, right? So if you look at all of my delivery, it's a picture with 1 to 3 sentences, because that's what you have for somebody's attention. The more you pontificate, the less people listen. And understanding that, understanding the communications loop, I think is going to go a long way towards communicating with our residents and with our voters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
I've been serving on boards and committees for nearly 25 years. And in that capacity, I've learned a great deal about how the institution of Plymouth works, how our government works. And I believe that that knowledge that I have, that institutional knowledge of how this town works, could be an asset to the residents of Plymouth. I love working with the residents of Plymouth and different organizations, educating them on how best to engage our town. I think that's where the effort should lie, because right now, the select board and the residents are at a point of disengagement. And I think that dialogue needs to be improved. And I think that the knowledge that I have about how the town works can be conveyed to the residents. They can become more educated in how to engage their government, more efficient in how they engage their government. I think the other side of the coin is that the elected officials and the town itself will appreciate that level of education as the residents approach the community with their concerns. I think it truly is about knowing how the process works so that you can be effective in making change. If you're going to make change, and we need change in our community in terms of the dialogue between our town and our residents, you have to understand how this process works. So I think that the key to this process is, understanding how best to communicate with the residents. And after 25 years of serving on various boards and committees, I believe I have that skill set to bridge the divide and the gap between the town itself and its residents, and improving the dialogue and making it more civil. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Charlie?
Thank you. So since I've been on the board, we've tried to do exactly this. We started off, we now have a communications director, and we have a quarterly newsletter. And I believe right now that this town administration and the board has never been more engaged with the public in the town's history. I'll give you 5 examples. The master planning process for the last 12 months has been having community forums to discuss the next 20 years. We've had the Holtech planning process. That's been underway since January, and has multiple community forums asking residents what they want to see come out of the Holtech purchase. The community health assessment just kicked off, engaging the community on what health means to them and their families. Forges Field and Hedges Pond master planning process, engaging parents and youth to determine what they want to see, and those 2 recreation areas become, that's going on now. We also have the Downtown Resiliency Project that's already had 3 forums. Yeah, those 5 things are happening now. And also, we've established the Climate Action Plan in May of 2024 with input from 47 community leaders and direct stakeholders and town officials. And this past month, the state also approved our open space plan as completed with much input. I also believe we need to work with voter groups and educational groups, like, for instance, this group, League of Women Voters, and meet with them. But the final thing I'll say about community engagement, and this is what I try to do as a select board member, I engage the community. My number, I'm accessible, my phone is available. I go into neighborhoods, I get calls all the time for problems, and I don't just answer the phone. I go to neighborhoods, and I see the problem, and I try and either get answers or try and get solutions to the problem. I think all select board members should do that.
Okay, thank you. And finally, John Mahoney.
Julie, was there a second part to the question, or was it strictly communication?
Well, it's communications, and it's how do you get people to be more engaged in the civic process? Look at how few people vote compared to how many registered voters there are, for example.
So, when I was a teenager and I first started voting in another community, that community and others, just like Plymouth, the races in the spring, they were ultra competitive everywhere. I think that, in my opinion, the decline in the voter turnout at the local level, to me, it's a generational thing. There's some significant change there. I don't know if it's, when you go back 40 years, the children who were growing up as their parents were, the greatest generation, World War II, I can only speculate on that. I'm disappointed tonight that I couldn't bring props. So I did have the campaign put $400 into 3 props that I had down at Red Brook last night. I tried to do with those props, Julie, exactly what you just said. I just tried to keep it simple and straightforward. I did a 2.5-minute video in my kitchen on basically a statistical analysis, never imagining that it would push 5,000 views within a few days on Facebook. I'm always available to everyone. There's a personal email, there's a town email, there's a cell phone. Obviously, Charlie references going out to the neighborhoods. When I first got on the board, we talked about making site visits. But the communication is there. Obviously, in today, especially in the last 10 years with the advent of Facebook and, God help me, I had to create an Instagram page for this campaign against my will. But then again, I do have a 19-year-old who, a week from Saturday, will be voting on Election Day, not early. So there's always room for improved communication.
Okay. Do you all, show of hands, think it is a primary objective of the Select Board to be part of an ongoing communication process? Or is it more of the town? So is it the Select Board, or is it the town? They're combined. Do you all agree with that you have to work together? Okay. What is the best way to facilitate information? Some of you have said Facebook. Well, a lot of people aren't on Facebook. Some of you have talked about the newsletter that is done. What is the best way, and let's just go right down 1 through 5, what's the best way to get that information out? What is the mode that you use to get information out to people?
It's the communications director in the website that they've created. I think we need to get it out there. As I said, the voter groups we need to meet with. And to me, the best way is just getting in the community and talking to people. But, everybody's in this electronics age.
Right. So you said the website and the communications director, because
website
everybody can go to the website if you have
newsletter.
access to
If we can get
internet.
the residents to read this, that's really the best way.
Okay.
But-
Deb?
So I think we need a communication plan that focuses on audience segmentation so that we understand who our different audiences are, who our different stakeholders are, how they like to get information, and what information they need, and build a plan around that. So sometimes it's going to be face-to-face, sometimes it's going to be Facebook, sometimes it's going to be the website, but we need to take the time to really do that. We know who's in town. We can figure out the audiences that we have to reach out
Okay.
to.
Audience segmentation. presentation. Go ahead. Bill?
So back in 1970, there was a effort in the planning process to develop a steering committees for each, village steering committees across the town of Plymouth. We need to, again, adjust that for the 21st century. We need to combine that with the town meeting members that operate in those areas. I think we need to support the village steering committees, North Plymouth, West Plymouth, downtown Plymouth, South Plymouth, Manomet. But we have to know that we're growing. There are parts of Plymouth, Red Brook and Pine Hills. We should be looking at expanding our village steering committees to include these new communities. So one of the things we need to do is expand the communication by expanding some of the things that we've done that have worked successfully
Okay.
over the years.
Okay, excellent. John?
So the town has a communications director, and obviously some of this is beyond me, but every platform on social media that is available is being used, okay? You have town emails, you have a website. Individual asked me a question today on Facebook. I put a PDF in there on civil service. So, and then, of course, you've seen in the last year or two the return to a quote-unquote a daily or a weekly periodical or a newspaper in the Independent. So the process is not perfect. I'll tell you that out of the communications director. I have been frustrated on a couple of times with respect to whether it's the Independent or others getting information in a timely fashion, but we continue to work on those deficiencies.
Excellent. Go ahead. Scott?
I think if you're reaching out to people directly, you need to hit all the social media platforms, but you also need to email and text. And that's, and basically, if you, everybody is probably already tired of texts and emails from Scott Vecchi. Because the more different venues I hit, if I send out emails, if I send out texts, if I use my social media, I hit more people. When you combine that with outreach, going to the village steering committees or their precinct meetings or something like that, that's how you communicate more directly with the people. And I think that's what we're talking about, is communicating directly. And again, you have to concise and condensed information. People get information overload. The more you pontificate, the less they listen. So keeping it short and sweet and directing them on where to go.
Okay.
Regular mail and sorry, brain cramp, but regular mail websites are 20 years ago.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Some really good suggestions there. Question 3. The town and the residents have expressed an interest in keeping much of the site we're calling the Pilgrim 1600 acres as open space. But part of that property, where the power plant itself was located, is not something the town has an option to buy and will remain Holtech property into the foreseeable future. Would you favor power generation on that particular section of the Holtech site? And if so, what power generation do you think would be feasible to put there? And we're going to go 4, 3, 1, 2, 5. So starting with John.
So 12 years ago last month, I sponsored an article at town meeting where we created the Nuclear Stabilization Fund. I was supported by the select board at the time and overwhelmingly by town meeting to prepare the community, and this is how I think, and this is the experience I bring, for the inevitability of that plant closing. I got up on town meeting floor and I said, it's a question, not a question of if the plant's going to close, it's a question of when. So today that account has $10.4 million in it. It is tied to a document that Mr. Bletzer, myself, and Mr. Canty in the audience, and 2 others secured, an 8-year-long document that expires June 30th of 2031 that guarantees us the first crack at 1,531 acres. And in the document, we have 270 days to perform. So over the last 10 years, we have developed a plan for development of the site in-house. It's a blue economy. It's a multi-billion-dollar build-out. But like Julie said, we don't own the land. So there's about 144 acres that Holtech has kept outside of that document, and obviously the majority of that is the existing plant that is being decommissioned. There are 4 questions you're going to ask yourself. I don't care what the power generation is. And the first one is this. Is the revenue going into the general fund, or is it staying out? Okay? You took the money from the power plant back in '72. You artificially lowered taxes. Your property taxes went up 600% over a 15 to 25-year period. So there will be no financial benefit to the community if any of that revenue goes into the general fund. If it doesn't, taxes go down immediately. And then the second questions are security, safety, and environmental. But that's where I stand on that one.
Okay, so the question was, what type of power generation would you favor on those acres, if you do in fact favor it?
Yes, I think we have to look at the fact that decommissioning
You
is...
need to turn your mic on.
My mic is on. Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. I think what we have to look at is the decommissioning process is underway. It's going to go on for a number of years. Technology is changing around energy production and energy needs, and we're going to have to be preparing for that reality in the future. And I think the township take a proactive stand on what possibly can go there. We're going through the master planning process. We're looking at the 1,600 acres in terms of preservation, and we need to make that a priority. But when it comes to the plant and the location, we are going to be storing waste at that location, and we have to make safety first. There are other decommissioning questions that we have to pay attention to, but I do believe that there is potential at this site to enter into agreements in the future about using the site for other forms of energy production or delivery in terms of other opportunities around the eastern seaboard when it comes to energy production. So it is an opportunity in the future, but we have to be prepared for it, and that if I was on the Board of Selectmen, I would be calling for a planning process to be dedicated to this one location and be able to adjust that over a period of time so that as the decommissioning process completed, we would have a better understand what technology was available at that time, because we're looking at 5-10 years out.
Okay. Charlie, what type of energy production would you recommend for that particular location? You need to turn your mic on?
Oh, you need that, okay. Sorry. This question, first of all, the residents were very clear about what they want to see, and we should try to make that happen. With respect to the part of the property that Holtech's keeping, we all realize that Holtech wants to do some kind of small nuclear power. And I would have to really look at that if it makes sense financially and environmentally to see if that would work. It would open up a lot of opportunities for data storage, but right now we can't even consider it because it's not allowed. Nuclear power is not allowed for the state. But I think that if it doesn't change, I really believe that Holtech will be looking to do battery storage on that property right there, and so I think that may be an option.
Okay.
Yeah.
Deb?
Yeah, I agree with Charlie on this one. I do think that given what we've seen with our energy costs over the past year, especially here in New England, we do definitely need to be exploring alternative forms of energy, and really taking a good hard look at what's available. I agree that the technology is changing so quickly that it's hard to say, oh yeah, I think that would be perfect there. The idea of SMRs, those small modular reactors, I think that's a very interesting thing to think about. I wouldn't want to be a test case for that. That's the only, that would be my biggest concern. We sort of ended up with the short end of the stick with the power plant when it first came in, because we didn't expect to be storing all of that nuclear waste. We thought that it was going to go to Yucca Mountain or Yucca Mountain, whatever it is that doesn't really exist. But instead, we have it here. It's in our backyard. So I would want to make sure that we had a plan for that. What we were going to do with what we currently have in place, and that whatever energy alternative replaced that would not add to the burden that the town already has. So I'm, completely in agreement on, the need to take a look at it from an environmental standpoint, from a health standpoint, but also, we need to be open-minded in terms of what kind of alternative forms of energy might be available. I know that people hear nuclear and get very frightened. because of our past experience with it and all of the bad things that can happen. But I do think that the technology is advancing so quickly that, you know, there could be a case made that it's not your grandfather's nuclear anymore. It's, you know, it's something that does make sense for us and that might make sense for our community.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Scott?
Well, this is actually an interesting question because, you know, when I was a police officer, I was a detective for a while, and I kind of learned how to read the room a little bit on things. And these small modular reactors are like the elephant in the room right now. And from the chatter I'm hearing in the background, a lot of these forums and a lot of different boards and all that other stuff, if I had to make an educated guess, I would say that Holtech's going to wait out the 8 years. That they're going to wait until we don't have that right of first refusal. The nuclear plant property, the east of Rocky Hill Road, is already federally zoned for nuclear power. It's all the other stuff. So if they wanted to put it in there, I'm not really sure what exactly steps we could take to stop that. Personally, you know, I grew up here. I was born at the Jordan Hospital in 1969. There's been a nuclear power plant in Plymouth for as long as I've been here, and while it might not be a functioning plant, there's still a lot of nuclear materials down there. But I don't think it comes down to what does Scott Vecchi want, as more as what does the town have an appetite for. So when Holtech comes and they say, hey, look, here's the Pilgrim 1600, but we want SMRs, does the town going to have an appetite for that? And I think that's more of a not what do I favor, but what do the people I represent favor? And that's going to be a hard conversation to have when you're talking about 1,600 acres, roughly, that could be put into conservation, preservation, open space, all that other stuff, with this carrot and stick approach. But it is something, you know, like we can't be blind to it. We can't just stick our head in the ground and not think that this conversation is going to come up down the road. This is a conversation that the community needs to start having now, to find out what the appetite is. And I trust me, I was standing at the plant when they had strikes. I was standing there when the downwinders were there. The nuclear energy is very controversial. But if there's a carrot and a stick,
Okay.
what does the town want? Thank you.
Okay, so let me just do it by a show of hands. For what I'm hearing, raise your hand if you would be open to just listening to what you just said, Scott. If Holtech said, okay, if you give us the ability to do an SMR on just the 140 acres, whatever that we have, the rest of that is absolutely going into conservation. Maybe we'll even give you a deal of what you have to pay for it. Would you entertain that notion? And I know that's hypothetical. How many would entertain that notion?
Yeah.
Is there anyone that would not entertain that notion? Okay, excellent. You all agree. So the following questions will be answered either a very brief yes or no with a brief explanation, or you have to raise your hand. I'm so mean. Okay. Form of government. Over the years, as Plymouth has grown in population and fiscal complexity, the idea of changing the form of government has been raised. Do you favor presenting the residents with the option to change Plymouth from a representative town meeting form of government to a city form of government, such as a council or a mayor? Yes or no, and you can give a minute. We'll give everybody up to a minute, Steve, to answer this, because it's a question that will come up and has come up in the past. And this is going to be Bill, then John, then Charlie, then Deb, then Scott. So yes or no, would you be in favor of presenting the residents with that option?
Well, over the years, we have presented the residents with different options in different forms of government. I have actively taken part in town meeting form of government. I believe it works. It could work better. We should be always revisiting our charter to make our government more efficient and more responsive to the people's needs. But I do believe in this representative form of government. I think it's a highly representative form of government. The residents can participate in their government by joining boards and committees or going to town meeting or participating as a town meeting member. I think that in Plymouth, there are some very critical decisions to be made. At 50% build-out, Plymouth is looking at a series of decades of development, and we need to manage that better. I believe that managing the development of the future of the town of Plymouth would be better in a transparent way, front and center with all the residents participating in what happens to the other half of Plymouth.
Okay, thank you. John?
No. Perfect example, December of '23, Brockton, Massachusetts. 10 individuals in charge over there, predominantly Democrats in this case, couldn't find $15 million, $14 to $18 million from the fiscal year that ended June 30th of '23, missing. Okay? And I believe all those people are still employed. Okay? So we don't need to go to a mayor-city form of government, city council form of government. The statistical probability of that happening in this community is 0. Okay? You've got a 5-member executive branch. You have 162 eyes at town meeting looking at your finances, and you have a very talented FinCom. Okay? It's not your form of government. It's what you're doing with the money. And this community has had 3 bond upgrades in the last 20 years. We're 1 shy of going AAA, which will probably never happen because of demographics, but I'm an absolute no.
Okay. Charlie?
Thank you for this question. We did a non-binding question about this, and it passed, that they wanted to change the government. But what happened, because it was non-binding, it didn't become law. So we had an election to elect a charter committee, which was a slate of folks that predominantly wanted to preserve the town meeting. And they made a stronger town meeting charter. So I'd like to see it go to the residents and let our residents decide what they want, but make it binding. Because I believe myself that this town is getting too big, we have too many important issues, and it's too slow, the process is too slow to get things done. We have to wait 6 months between town meetings, and I believe that it's time for a change. But
Okay.
I'll leave it up to the residents.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
you're a yes on leaving it to the residents. Deb?
Yeah, I would answer that question by saying not now. And the reason I say not now is because this would be a huge change management exercise, and we'd need to do it the right way. Because as a number of my colleagues have said, it's gone before the town before, and people have rejected it. And I think it's because it's been so confusing to people. What does it mean? What are we going to be losing? What are we going to be gaining? All of those kinds of questions need to be answered. And that takes education. That's going to be a process. And if we do it right, we might get to the point where people can make really, truly informed decisions and aren't just reacting to it. That said, I do think that the town meeting members that we have in place, for the most part, are very hardworking. They do such a great job, but it's an inequitable distribution, inequitable representation, because some of the precincts are not as strong as others, so there's not as much engagement and involvement. While we have this form of government, I would want to work to make it as efficient as possible.
Okay, thank you. And Scott?
Yes. And I'd like to say that I served as a town meeting member. I've also served on the Charter Review Committee, as well as the last Charter Commission. The problem is when we were going down that road about whether we wanted to move towards a mayor's form of government, is that we had a person come on to Zoom while we were in session, and then forgot to mute her mic and proceeded to launch a tirade against Frank. Proving the point of electable but not competent. And so that's the one thing that we really need to be aware of, is that some of the people that may or may not be electable might not be competent to be a mayor. The other side of that coin is we have a town manager. And right now we have a town manager who has a contract through 2029 for some reason, right? And may function as an unelected mayor at times.
Okay, thank you. So we have 2 yes, 2 no, and 1 not yet. Okay. Okay, good. This board split. Do you favor a higher commercial tax rate at this time for Plymouth? Yes or no? And you can have a minute on this one, because a lot of people don't really understand the ramifications of this. So this is going to go Charlie, John, Bill, Scott, Deb.
I am not in favor of a split tax rate, absolutely not. At this time, to do split tax would have to, the towns that do it, that it works, have more demand for commercial businesses than they have space. Simply, that's not the case here in Plymouth. It would hurt, it would crush our already struggling small businesses by doing this. So it's anti-business. Right at this time, we're not ready for a split tax rate, and so I'm vehemently against this.
You're a hard no. Okay. John?
So I put out a video, and for a couple of forums, I have brought a prop, if you will, on this topic. The video is on my Facebook page. It is also on my Instagram page. It is 2.5 minutes long. It explains why I am adamantly opposed to it. So the reversal of the trend is a statistical impossibility. Unfortunately, we will arrive at build out in 2040 with the 95 to 98% residential tax base, and you have to break your addiction to just exponentially growing property taxes by dumping money into an account where the US dollar never returns from, okay? You will just bankrupt the remaining businesses in the community, and you will just put up a sign saying that you don't want new companies to come here.
Okay, so you're a hard no. Bill?
We shouldn't do anything that would diminish the strength of our small businesses in our communities. But at the same time, we have to look at the toolbox to control property taxes. Now, every year, the finance director presents to the Board of Selectmen a tax, when they're working on the tax rate, there'll be a discussion about a split tax rate. And every year, there's a decision and a vote of the board whether to move forward on something like that. At this time, I would not take that tool out of the toolbox. But what I would do is start to look at fine-tuning it by focusing on types of commercial zoning that is not paying its way or beneficial to the town of Plymouth. We should protect our light industrial. We should actually incentivize it by zoning changes to enhance it. And we should be looking at taxes that encourage small businesses. We have an economic development foundation, and they should be focused on looking at small businesses and supporting them rather than developing areas of Plymouth in
Okay.
terms of removing sand from our environment.
Scott?
I'm intrigued by the split tax rate, but the problem comes into how do we define where we split the tax? What do we define as a commercial tax base? I ran a successful small business in town, Mayflower Taxi, for 14 years with 11 full-time and 10 part-time employees. And if that small business was categorized as a commercial and taxed at a much higher rate, it would have forced me out of business. So now we need to define, at what level. And that's a whole conversation that has to be had before we even decide whether we want to pursue this or not. Because you have hairdressers and nail salons and all these other small businesses that we want to encourage and develop and bring more of into town. So we need to define, at what point does something become a quote-unquote commercial that we would tax at a different rate. And I think until we have that conversation, we can't truly say yes or no. I am intrigued by the idea. I would like to pursue the idea once we define where we're going to put it.
Okay, and finally, Deb?
Yeah, so my whole platform is around balancing economic development with sustainability and really working hard to attract more business into town so that we can expand our commercial tax base. So I am against a split tax base, split tax rate for commercial. I just think it would be the wrong thing to do. Plymouth already has a reputation for being a difficult town to do business with, and we would not want to, discourage more businesses by having a higher tax rate for them. However, I am very interested in thinking about what some towns on the Cape have done in terms of residential tax exemption, which gives a different tax rate for people that live in their home year-round versus those who have short-term rentals. That would also free up some housing and help with the housing crisis that we have here. So I would be interested in looking at that.
Okay, so we have 2 hard no's and right now, and some not really right now, but you want to kind of look at it. So Scott, Bill, and Deb, are feeling like maybe.
Not for commercial.
Not for commercial.
No, I'm not in favor
Okay,
of
you're not at all.
commercial.
I'm sorry.
No, I just mentioned the residential
Okay.
as another interesting alternative
Okay.
for splitting taxes in a way that might be beneficial for the town.
Okay, I'm
Not for
sorry.
commercial.
So it's Bill and Scott that are a little bit intrigued, like you might want to know more information about that.
But never doing anything to hurt small businesses, that we should be looking at enterprises that are burdening the town.
Okay, all right. Do you want to debate that question anymore? Or you don't need to? Okay. Let's go on to the ballot questions for right now. When you walk into the ballot, when you walk into the polling place, you have to either check yes or no. So you're going to answer by raising your hand, and then you get a minute to explain, all right? So ballot question number 1 is the civil service law. Yes, if you voted yes, you're going to say you want it revoked, and Plymouth should be able to establish its own policies and procedures for hiring of the police. If you say no, you want the Plymouth to stay with the existing civil service law. How many of you are going to go into the ballot box and vote yes? 3. Okay, and how many are going to vote no? Okay, excellent. So let's talk about why we're doing that, and we'll just go reverse order. Scott, you start first. You're a no.
All right, it's an interesting question, because last night I talked to one more police officer who left the Plymouth Police Department, and I believe last night or tomorrow might be his last shift. And none of the reasonings he had for leaving had to do with civil service, right? There's a much bigger problem that needs to be addressed before we deal with civil service when you have people literally abandoning ship, right? There has to be an underlying cause, and as the captain of the ship, the burden rests solely on the chief to solve whatever problems are going on up there that are causing these people to leave. And again, they've lost 10, I think this one makes 11, and there's a couple more in the pipeline that I personally know, all right? So why are these people abandoning ship? It has absolutely nothing to do with civil service. Civil service currently allows a 50-50 split, where you can take 50% of the people from the civil service list and 50% from other places. I actually just read an email from Nolan Peroni on this. So I voted no already.
Okay, so you're a no. Okay, John? You're a yes.
I'm a yes, and one of Massachusetts does some things well at the state level. They do some other things that are not so well, not good. And one of those things is revisiting things that they have passed in the past that no longer work to the level that they should. 40B, passed in 1969. I'm not saying get rid of it. You got to go back and amend it and do a couple of changes. Chapter 61, which we're currently dealing with now with Atlantic Country Club, the same thing. Antiquated, revisit it, change it. This is another thing. It's over 100 years old. Chief Flynn loses somebody tomorrow. It takes him 18 months to replace him. I'm voting yes. The time has come. I wish the state had gotten out ahead of this one. And I'm comfortable with the parameters or the guide rails that are still in place with respect to protecting against favoritism and biases with respect to hiring.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
Yes. So my greatest reservation, we've been in civil service for over 117 years, and I think that opting out so quickly without an educational forum leading the way is a reservation that I have. The select board met they met by Zoom on an emergency meeting on a Friday afternoon, voting to put this on the ballot, giving us 37 days to decide to opt out of a policy that we've had for well over 100 years, designed to hire the best people and not what you know, not who you know, but what you know. I know there's state regulations and local bylaws that govern this. If this goes away, we haven't heard a healthy debate on what will replace it and how we will move forward. So it's on the ballot very quickly, very little debate going on. I'd like to see more. I can't vote for it because I feel like this should be placed on a ballot question
Okay.
in the future where we have more
Thank you.
time to debate it.
Okay, so you're a no. Deb?
Yeah, I'm a yes. We have a public safety issue if we can't attract and retain the police officers that we have. And civil service served its purpose at one point in time, but I think that it's outlived its usefulness. It's very restrictive. The time constraints in terms of being able to actually get someone on the streets is unacceptable in this day and age, and I think we need to do something about it. That said, I do agree that we could have done a better job educating people about it. I had some personal experience with civil service, as my former husband was a police officer and a police chief who was involved in exempting our town from civil service. And I understand how it works and how it doesn't work. And I do also understand that we will have guardrails put in place, exams and assessment centers and other things. Police officers don't want to be riding with someone who's not trained, so I think
Okay.
that we'll do a
Thank
good
you.
job of doing that.
Okay, and finally, Charlie?
Thank you. I'm probably going to run out of time, so I'm just going to say this. If you're against this, you're either completely disconnected from the police department or you don't understand the public safety. We're in a crisis. I have, if you want any information, I get the package on civil service and why we're getting out right here. And I'd be glad to give it to one of my fellow candidates. The reason why officers are leaving, very simply, this is a very busy town. They're going to other departments for quality of life. A little more money, less work. Very simple. We can't get officers fast enough through the civil service. There's only 100 towns left in civil service out of 433. This is going to be able to let us recruit our own officers. It will have the same standards with the post standards. They're going to have the same protections. It's about quality of life. It was a collective bargain thing, yeah, but the shift is a
Okay.
shift change, and it's all
You're a
about
yes.
quality of life for our
Okay,
officers, too.
thank you. You're a yes. Okay. Do we all want to have another 30 seconds on this? Because if we give one, you get them all. Okay. Go ahead, John.
I just want, it's unfortunate that the negotiation came down to a time constraint where we had a Zoom meeting on a Friday. But I just want everybody to know that 4 days later, Chief Flynn came into this room at the podium where Julie was and put up an 18-slide PowerPoint on the rationale for making this decision. And that PowerPoint is now, I put it out there on Facebook today, and it is all over in different forms on the town website. So I have more confidence in the electorate in Plymouth that given 30 days with the proper information, they can educate themselves.
Okay. Anyone want to comment? Bill?
Yeah, the PowerPoint that was presented after the vote. The vote had been taken to put this on the ballot. And like I said earlier, I think that giving a town 37 days to make an important decision like this about public safety is, I think, not something that I would have supported. Having it on a Zoom meeting on a Friday afternoon and putting it on the ballot, and then in the preceding days since then, I haven't seen a very vigorous debate or discussion on this. I'm not opposed to someday looking at some other policy, but this is not the way we should go going about it, rushing it on the ballot with very little debate.
Okay, before someone else says something, I just have a question. So if it wasn't put on the ballot this time, how long would the police department have to wait to do it again?
Another year.
Okay, another year. So if playing devil's advocate, was that one of the reasons that it had to go on the ballot?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it didn't have to, but that was
Well,
certainly
you
a
wanted
rationale
it
to
to.
support
Why the
it.
police chief wanted it to. Who else would like to speak on this?
Well, I mean, we've been in it for well over 100 years. One more year would not, tip the scales to a degree, because this is something that required a discussion with all the residents, and I think that information should have been, produced at an earlier point in time.
Understood.
Yep.
Understood. Yep, Charlie?
I'd like to say this one more time. We're down 20 officers. This is a public safety crisis. To say that we're going to wait another year is just outrageous.
Okay.
And the 37 days, this should take you about 20 minutes to read and to understand what this is about.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I have the package. I'll give it to you if you want to read it. This is a no-brainer. This should pass overwhelmingly, I hope.
Okay.
Because it's a safety issue.
Deb?
Yeah, I think there is definitely a sense of urgency here, so we needed to move quickly. But I also hope that we can learn from this experience, because what we've done is we've frightened the community, is now thinking, who doesn't understand what civil service is and isn't, that we're putting untrained people out on the streets, and that's just not the case.
Okay, and Scott?
And as somebody who spent 30 years as a civil service police officer, 3 years at the MBTA Police and 27 years at the Plymouth Police Department, I'm pretty sure I understand how civil service works. And I understand it a little bit more than a PowerPoint or a pamphlet, okay? The focus should be on retaining police officers. Stop the exodus, all right? Have an outside person come in, interview the entire police department. What are the causes? I talk to these people. They tell me what the causes are. Okay? If we can opt out of civil service and continue a revolving door of police officers, and right now, most of your police department has about 2 or 3 years on the street max.
Okay, so can we agree that in a perfect world, it would be a longer span of time where the residents are being told, we see this coming, we're going to have a problem. We're going to have a problem with being able to retain officers, with being able to hire officers. We need to look at this. Show of hands. Would it, in a perfect world, would have 6 months been a better window
No.
for people to learn about this? Charlie, you're saying no?
Absolutely not. It would take it takes us a year to a year and a half. We need to start recruiting right now, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the offices themselves. By the way, it's almost unanimous for this, okay? And they're going to recruit. They're going to go to college campuses, okay? And they're going to recruit educated people that want to have a career, and they're going to talk about. And by the way, the Quinn bill, they're not getting the Quinn bill. The Quinn bill is 10, 20, and 30.
Okay.
They're getting 20. They're getting 10 and 25.
Okay.
And that was misstated the other night. But the officers, it's quality of life for them. They're going to be able to go and recruit and tell them that shifts of 4 and 4.
Okay, so so your answer to my question of it would not have been
No, we're
possible
short now.
to made this a 6-month
This summer
process?
is going to be a tough summer for the police department.
Okay.
We're so short.
Is there anyone that, Deb?
I just want to clarify, you meant like if this started 6 months ago
Yeah.
and we were here today.
Yeah.
If it could have started 6 months ago, I think we'd be in a much better position from a public
From
perception
a public
standpoint.
relations perspective, okay.
It would-
Go ahead, Bill.
And that's that's all I'm saying on
Okay.
the matter, is that it would have been nice, if this is such a crisis, at such a level that where our safety is in jeopardy,
Mm-hmm.
we should have heard about this not 37 days out, but 6 months out,
Okay.
so that we could properly prepare for it.
Okay, and John? Okay, and Scott?
And yet again, as somebody who actually worked there, the true Quinn bill is 10% for an associate's, 20% for a bachelor's, and 25% for a master's. However, the town of Plymouth, back in 1997-ish, negotiated another 5%, which made it 10, 20, and 30. So yes, I actually do know what I'm talking about.
Okay, okay. We're not going to make this personal. This is about what's going on and what voters have to look at when they go into the ballot box, okay? I think you've all made it very clear how you feel and why you feel the way you do, and I appreciate that. Keep it cool, guys and girls. All right, the ballot question 2, which is the town government communicating with elected officials and state agencies in matters concerning Holtech and the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station. Yes, if you agree that town employees and elected officials should talk to the state delegation, and no if you think they shouldn't talk to them. How many are going to vote yes? And Scott, you will be voting no? Okay, so you're all voting yes. When I looked at this question, I thought...
I went into space for a minute, so
Okay,
I
I thought,
apologize.
who wouldn't vote for this? But that's just me. Okay, before we go to closing remarks, I'd like to ask you guys each a question about yourselves, and what you bring to the select board in terms of 2 or 3 words that you'd use to describe the value of your character or your character traits that you have that you bring to the position, maybe your 2 greatest attributes that you bring to the board, personal attributes. And we'll go Scott, Charlie, John, Bill, Deb. Scott, 2 great attributes, and just make it quick.
I think the biggest one is my leadership.
Okay.
Right? As a gunnery sergeant of Marines, a person who led Marines in combat, I am a very extrovert and at times very direct personality. I have no one of the things you try and do is you try and get people to do things because they think it's their idea. The other one is you encourage them, and then when you have to, you tell and you make. All right, that's one of the things that I bring to the board: decisive leadership. All right, the other part is I possess a historical and institutional knowledge of the town of Plymouth from having lived here my entire life and having worked here for 27 years.
Okay, thank you. Charlie, what do you bring?
I bring honesty and integrity to this board, and I'm accessible. If I make a mistake, I admit it. I've done it a couple times in open meetings, and I'm not afraid to do that. So that's what I bring. I answer my phone. I help people with problems and issues, and I've been doing this for 25 years in this community, helping people, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. Thank you.
Okay. John?
Non-political, data-driven. 99% of what we should be doing is what is right for the community. I look at the numbers. I'm not afraid to say that this doesn't work. We need to do something different. You've heard some of that tonight, and I've got the resume over the course of the last 15 years of getting significant initiatives passed through town meeting.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
My knowledge of the community and my institutional knowledge of the town, and also my passion for government service. It's something that has driven my interest in my community, which I grew up in. Those are the two things that I think I bring to the table: knowledge how the government works to help residents better interact with it, and my passion for it.
Okay. And finally, Deb? Yep.
I've lost track of the order. Sorry about that. I think I bring a strategic perspective so I can understand the long-term implications of decisions that we make today. I also am open-minded. In fact, I always say that I prefer to talk to people who don't agree with me because I learn more from them, and it just helps me see a broader perspective. And I also think that I bring integrity. I mean, really, what you see is what you get. I am not a politician. I am just a teacher and a former business leader and a community volunteer. So I think those are the three things that I could bring to this.
Okay, thank you. And overall, this is for all of you, if you could give the select board, over the course of, let's say, the last 20 years, what are the two greatest things that the Plymouth Select Board, used to be Board of Selectmen, now it's Select Board, have done for the town of Plymouth over the last 20 years? And I'll let you all think about it for a second because that's a tough one. And we'll go Bill, Charlie, Deb, Scott, John.
Over a 23-year period of time, I worked to get the Community Preservation Act adopted in the town of Plymouth, which was designed to protect open space, build community housing, preserve historical landmarks. In that capacity, I had to take those questions to the Board of Select. And I want to thank those 23 years of those select boards who supported those articles that went to town meeting with almost a 99% passage rate. So I want to commend the selectmen for the last 23 years in their support of the Community Preservation Act. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Charlie?
I can only really speak of the 4 years I've been on the board, and I'm proud of the select board members I've sat with, and I can just say that we've been proactive since I got on the board. There was problems with our roads, with our buildings, and we got proactive and we started putting money away in stabilization funds. We also are putting money away, so we're going to be able to get a seat at the table with Holtech when and if and when that comes available. So I'm proud that we've been proactive.
Okay. Deb?
Yeah, so I haven't been in Plymouth for 20 years, so I
Okay.
can't have to
15.
answer from a shorter perspective. But I do agree that setting up that nuclear stabilization fund was a very good proactive move. But more broadly, I'm a member of the Open Space Committee in Sustainable Plymouth, and I've always been very impressed with the support that the Select Board has given to the various environmental issues that we've brought forward. Whenever we've had a project or an initiative, they give it a very fair hearing, and usually are for the most part, very supportive of what we're trying to do. So for that, I'm grateful.
Okay, wonderful. And John?
So Deb, I want to thank you for mentioning the stabilization fund. So even though that was my idea, the board supported it and town meeting supported it, and it dovetails nicely with today's world where we have 70% of the thousands of people who have responded that want the majority of that land put into forestry. And that's why that fund was created. But it's a difficult question. But the second thing I would tell you is that, and I won't go into the psychology here, but the community of Plymouth, until this structure was built, had never constructed a brand-new town hall. And the community came together, passed the meals tax at town meeting in 15. It accumulated for a few years. Upon completion in 17 of the build-out, you got this magnificent structure with no property tax increase. We went out to bond in 2018, and it was really a special day when we inaugurated it with Congressman Keating.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we're going to go into closing remarks. You can talk about anything during this. You have, Steve, can we give them, since we have time, can we give them up to 3 minutes each? Because you might want to have a closing remark, but then you might want to, oh, I'm sorry, did I not ask you? Oh, Scott, I'm so sorry. I missed you. I'm sorry, Scott.
I have very delicate feelings, I'll have
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead. Select board.
Somewhere in there, their feelings.
Yes,
But
select
anyway,
board, go ahead.
Like I want to talk to, it's kind of funny because the same thing happened on WATD where
I'm
Christine
sorry.
James kind of, I'm like,
Here I am.
so I'm going to agree with Bill on the open space and the CPC. That's the boards that have supported that, obviously very, very important. But one of the other things that the boards have supported is the Historic District Commission. And they've supported the work on the Historic District Commission to keep our downtown like we want it to be. Because the downtown area it makes up the Historic District Commission should be Mayberry RFD, right? We should. That's where people come. They come to see the Rock, see the Mayflower, to spend their money to do their tourism, right? And I think that's one of the most important things that has occurred in the last 20 years is that we've kept, and I'm biased obviously as a former member of the Historic District Commission, that we've kept downtown Plymouth the quaint community that we want it to be. And that there are things that are down there that bring in a lot of tourism, a lot of money, but it still maintains that atmosphere of when me and Billy grew up on Stevens Field, and you walk through town and there was 17 to 25,000 people in the entire town.
Yeah.
So you knew everybody you saw. And I think that's one of the most important things.
Okay,
But-
wonderful.
and
Well,
like-
that's been a nice recap of a lot of the things that the Select Board has done over the years. So for your closing remarks, can you, I'm not going to say it, just do whatever you want to say for your 3 minutes, and we will do it in the order of Scott, Deb, Charlie, John, Bill. Closing remarks, you have up to 3 minutes. Go.
Thank you. And just speaking to the audience as well as to people on PAC TV, my name is Scott Vecchi, and I'm humbly asking for your vote on or before May 17th. I was born at the Jordan Hospital. I can trace my lineage back to the boat and 7 of the pilgrims that came across on it. My dad was a Plymouth police officer. My mom was a registered nurse at the Jordan Hospital. My grandfather and great-grandfather were both captains on Plymouth Fire. The town of Plymouth and public service runs in my blood. I currently serve as an attorney and an EMT. I actually like being an EMT more than I like being an attorney. But that's so that I can continue to give back to my community. Aside from that, I'm a retired gunnery sergeant of Marines. I bring decisive leadership, combat-tested leadership to the table, which that is the one thing that separates me from my compatriots up here before you tonight, is that my leadership has been tested in combat and was successful. I'm also a retired police officer who's driven pretty much almost every mile of road. I know where half of the things are buried in the town of Plymouth when you're looking for water mains and gas lines and all that other stuff. And that historic and institutional knowledge will benefit me to benefit my community. With a lifetime of public service, I'm asking for your vote to help me continue my lifetime of service to our country and our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deb, closing remarks.
Okay. Thank you so much, Julie, and thanks to PlymouthFirst for hosting this and for everyone who came tonight. Appreciate that. So I've been in Plymouth for about 15 years now, and for most of my career, I was a communications and change management professional, and I was a partner in a global consulting firm, a job that I loved. Now I'm a public school teacher and a community volunteer doing work in environmental issues and civic issues. So I am very familiar with change, personal change and change in organizations. And I know that if something isn't worth it working, you make a change. So that's why I'm concerned that we're still talking about the same challenges we were when I first got here 15 years ago. We seem to be repeating the past instead of learning from it, and we're not going to solve our problems with this same old way of thinking. So it's time for fresh ideas and new leaders who know how to plan proactively for Plymouth's future and who are excited to do it. And that's what I will bring to the board. My vision for Plymouth is clear. I believe we can balance economic development and sustainability in a way that will improve the quality of life for all of our residents. To do that, we need three things. First, a strategy for responsible growth that directs development to the right areas. That means the right infrastructure, the right environmental protections, and it's the right project for the community. Second, we need a real plan to stabilize property taxes that starts with a comprehensive economic development plan to expand our commercial tax base and attract businesses that will provide a good, livable wage for our residents. And third, we need a proactive plan to guide our progress so that we protect what we value most, our unique character, our precious aquifer, and our vision for truly affordable housing. I don't have all the answers, but I know how to ask the right questions, and I know how to bring people together to solve complex problems. I know how to communicate, and most importantly, I know how to listen. And these are precisely the skills that I think the Select Board needs right now, and I think some of you will agree with me on that. In every organization I've ever worked with, meaningful change always starts at the top, because you can't keep doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results. So it's time for new leadership, fresh ideas, and a strong commitment to our future. I'm looking forward, not back, and if you are too, I would be honored to have your vote on or before May 17th. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie?
Thank you. Thank you to Plymouth First, to the committee, especially you, Julie, for moderating us. You're always exciting, and this has been an interesting forum, as most of the ones I've had. So, but anyway, Plymouth is facing real complex issues, and we need leadership that's focused, collaborative, and proactive. Since joining the Select Board, I've worked hard to shift us from a reactive mindset to a proactive one. Because when we anticipate problems and plan ahead, we get better results for the people we serve. One of the most pressing challenges is housing. Too many of our working families and even our seniors are being priced out of town, the town they live. We need more workforce housing so people who work here can afford to live here. When residents live and work in the same community, they become more engaged and invested in its future, and that's what Plymouth needs. We also owe it to our seniors, many of whom have lived here their entire lives, to ensure they can retire in dignity. That means prioritizing affordable senior housing, not just as a policy, but as a moral commitment. And when we talk about housing, we also need to talk about local control. State laws like 40B can place an unfair burden on towns like ours. But if we take action now by addressing housing head-on, we can shape our own future and protect our ability to make decisions locally. Of course, none of this matters if our residents are being crushed by the cost of living. Sky-high utility bills are hurting hard-working families. While we can't fix this overnight, I've built strong relationships with our state delegates and county officials to advocate for relief, and I'll keep pushing every day to ease that burden. In everything I do, I'm guided by one belief: leadership should serve the people. That's why I'm asking for your vote to continue building a Plymouth that's more affordable, more inclusive, and more prepared for the future. And I end this with, please, on question one, please, if you need information, get the information. It's a very important public safety question, and I believe that we have to vote yes to to keep our town safe. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Julie, can I ask my opponents a question and give them each 30 seconds to answer it, and then I'll take a minute for my closing?
Do you all agree with that? Scott?
No, all four of you.
Okay.
30 seconds apiece. Okay, so the question is this. Do you believe, irrespective of the revenue stream, that all future tax revenue streams should end up in the general fund? And if you got to take longer, ask Julie for more time. Could you explain why?
So we'll go Bill, Deb, Charlie, and then Scott to answer that.
No.
No.
I think that we have to be looking at revolving funds, especially as we encroach on this economic situation where we might be losing federal funding. The town of Plymouth has looked into grant writing and looking at grants, but we also, it's not the first time we've fallen into hard times. So I do believe that we have to look at innovative ways of pay-as-you-go activities associated with running the town of Plymouth. But not all funds should go into the general fund. We should be looking at stabilization funds, revolving funds, things of that nature.
Okay, thank you. Deb?
Yeah, to be honest, I can't add any more to what Bill just said. I would just be repeating what he said.
Okay,
I
so you
also
agree with
say
that
no,
too?
yeah.
Yep, Charlie?
Absolutely not. Good example, American Cruise Line, which they're coming tomorrow for the first visit. The money from that goes into the harbor for maintenance and upgrades in the harbor. So that's a good example that we're doing that right now. So
Okay.
that's a no. So-
Okay, yep. Scott?
No, as one of the only people who've actually proposed a new revenue stream that needs to be an enterprise fund. And the reason being is so that money can roll over from year to year without have to be expended by June 30th, but also so that that enterprise fund can buy equipment.
Okay.
If we were to adopt that model, it could buy ambulances, it could buy more fire equipment, it could buy fire trucks if it's run by the fire department.
Got it.
So that's an enterprise funds are very important.
Okay, so John, all of them have answered to the affirmative that they do not think all the tax revenue should go into the general fund.
So if I'm a Plymouth taxpayer, I should be relieved at all four of those answers. Just want to let you know. Excellent.
Okay. So now you have 2 minutes. Can you set it for 2 minutes?
Fantastic. So I've said this for years, the two greatest economists out there are Albert Einstein and Robert Frost. So it's about conducting a different experiment. You can't keep doing the same thing. You got to take the different path. And long before I got on the select board, I showed up at Ann Dunn's office back in '07 when I was on FinCom and requested the tax revenue payments in '72 from the power plant, converted them into present value dollars at 3%, and learned a lesson. So I'm asking you for one of your two votes on May 17th. I am the agent of change for the last 15 years, and I will continue to do that, to put this community in a better place with respect to land, okay? The aforementioned nuclear plant stabilization fund for the 1,531 acres, water, and US dollars. Obviously, I didn't initiate it, but supporting this structure that you're currently in, 0 property tax increase. But going back to town meeting and tweaking that language, so if we keep depositing strategic revenue streams in there, you won't have to worry about your property taxes going up for a $100 million elementary school in North Plymouth, okay? The elimination of double taxation, supporting that over a decade ago with respect to your enterprise funds, asking a hard question, which is embarrassing in today's world, does the roads tax go to roads? And working with the finance director and the board to put a process in place so we didn't raise property taxes $200 million to invest in our roads. But every year we'll collect a tax for roads. So that's what I bring to the table. I've been proud to serve you for the last 15 years. Obviously, you probably all know how to get a hold of me, and if any of you want to talk, I'm always available. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. This has been really incredible. And for voters out there who, maybe this is the only,
Okay.
I doubt it, but this is the only.
I
Oh
haven't
my
gotten.
God, I didn't do it again.
I can
Bill.
forget me.
And I just like leaving people out, okay? I'm sorry.
at least
Bill,
it's-
go.
at
I
least
have a
it's not just
tendency
me.
of talking too much.
Oh, my God.
This campaigning has trained me to be concise.
Go ahead. I'm
but that
sorry.
was a little
I'm
too
s-
concise.
I'm sorry.
But I want to take the time to thank you, Julie,
Yes.
and thank PlymouthFirst for hosting this forum. I also want to take time to thank Scott and John and Deb and Charlie. We've been to numerous forums, and it's been a pleasure campaigning with them. I do want to speak to the passion that I have for my community. I grew up in this town, in a large family in downtown Plymouth, and my parents taught me the importance of public service and giving back. They taught me a passion of responsibility. And I graduated from the local schools, went to college. After graduating from college, I spent time as a community organizer across the country, working in communities and organizing them. I ended up in Washington working on Capitol Hill for a senator, Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan. And that was an education in itself. He taught the idea of everyone can have their own opinions, but you can't have your own facts. And when I had the opportunity to come home to Plymouth, I began a small business in real estate, and I got myself involved in committees and boards in the town. In that capacity, I learned this institutional knowledge of how the town worked, and I took those facts and I put them to work. In 2002, there was an opportunity to adopt the Community Preservation Act. We were able to adopt the Community Preservation Act, preserving thousands of acres of land, building affordable housing units, and preserving some of the most significant historical buildings on the South Shore. The building that we're in today is a result of that effort. But it wasn't done alone. It was done with many different people working together. I learned the nonprofits. The human capital of Plymouth is immense. As it grows, we bring people in. They have a great deal to offer, and we need to do a better job capitalizing on that. And I think that if, with my knowledge and understanding of the process, I can help the residents be more effective engaging their government and the select board engaging its residents, because right now there's a disconnect that we need to work to improve. So on May 17th, I hope people consider me for one of your 2 votes, and I'd be honored to serve in this capacity if you so choose. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all. Audience, thank you so much. You have been wonderful. David Antoine, who is sitting in the back room from the local scene, thank you so much for putting this out live on air and all the cable channels. Remember, voters, this is a 3-year term, and you've got some really great candidates who really were passionate and made their points, and good luck to each and every one of you. You were just wonderful and very professional, and I appreciate that. Thank you, and good night.
We're done with that.